So we have an update. After day 1 of the first round of the NCAA National Collegiate Women's Gymnastics Championships, it's all Division 1 schools, Division 2 schools, and Division 3 schools do count. But you don't get an automatic qualifying spot based on like what you're winning the championship, winning your conference championship. But like Division 2 schools, Division 3 schools, they all competed and won gymnastics championships. It's not like women's hockey or, like men's volleyball. It's not like women's, like men's volleyball championship. There's teams, and then like some automatically get qualifiers. Like the automatic qualifiers to like Division 2 schools or Division 3 schools that compete in the move within the Division 1 ranks, and there's Division 2, Division 3 schools that don't want to fall to Division don't want to be, so they stay in Division 3 because they're not maybe the money or the resources to go on full on that sport with Division 1 ranks. You know what I'm saying? So, but a lot of them, the schools that are Division 2, Division 3, they might have like their own championships. They're like a smaller, not the NCAA championships, but like a smaller championship postseason after their conference championships meet. After a full-on conference meets. Which they're only doing for like I think in conference play you might meet up with every single one. But you might have some like four team meets, your team and 3 other teams, maybe a few of them, then some single meets. So you also have like a lot of like 3-person, 4-person team meets. You play to do more teams this way, So, and then on the first we have Air Force took on Nebraska. And Nebraska advanced with a 195.600. Air Force had a mistake in that one, a big mistake. They just couldn't overcome. It was like a point, like 1.25 after two runs. It was on like the, it was the second one, and they had a mistake on. And then Arizona State, 195.425. Arizona had a really big mistake in that one, in the Tempe regional. And then they're hosting that one, and then LSU's hosting that regional, the Baton Rouge regional. And so Arizona had a big mistake. They had like a 9.2. It was like I know they had like dropped an 8.825, and then like a 9.2. Like not either 9.2, 9.3, but it was two big mistakes, and they had to count one, the worst of the 2 mistakes. Which, ouch, that hurts. That really hurts. And now they'll be going up against Florida, California, Penn State, Arizona State now. So the winners will go to, in the top 2 teams in each. The top 2 teams in each of the the winner of the first round one will move on to the second round, and the top 2 in the regional in the second round, which is the regional semifinals, they will move on to the regional final, and then the top 2 in the regional final move on to the semis. And then the top 2 in the semifinal move on to the final. So, you don't need to be number 1. You just need to be... You don't need to win. The 4 teams that win, you don't need to be that. It's not like that. Then you go down to 2 for the... As if it was that, they could have like a semifinal then if they wanted 8 teams in the semis. You just have the two winners of each second round meet, but they have the top two move on because they want 4 teams each meet, so we have 32. We start out with 36. It moves to 32 then, and then we have tomorrow where there's 2 meets at 2 Eastern, and then there's 1 at 4 Eastern, 1 at 5 Eastern, and then there'll be a few later in the day as well. There's going to be two semifinals, 2 regional semifinals in Baton Rouge on the 2nd, and then there's going to be 2 in Tempe, and then there's going to be the first round from Oregon State Corvallis, and then there's going to be Lexington regional first round from that one. So yeah, they're going to be a little bit later in the day. One semifinal is going to be a little bit later, and then one's going to be a little bit late, and later at night, and one's going to be a little bit during the day, So we'll see how. So that's kind of nice, but yeah. And if I can have some whip around, because there's going to be a multi-view. ESPN's been doing the multi-views of like NBA G League games, NHL games that they have the rights on ESPN Plus for. They have the rights on ESPN Plus for every NHL power play they've been doing, because it's not like a streaming server. Like NHL's doesn't do and NFL, so they ticket like NFL does, or MLB.TV, and so they have to do it like that, NHL allow them to do NHL power play and keep it on for free on but you can't. But you have to black out your local local team schemes, and you have to have a location on, so you can black out where you are and black out the local team in your area, that you're at, currently. So, so I'll be watching some of them meets. And the only thing is, some of these meets do overlap especially on Friday. They overlap the women's Final Four for basketball, which is kind of a shame. But yeah, I might have both on one split the screen. One on my TV and my computer. So yeah, it is what it is. I'll be watching the meets, and yeah, it's exciting to see some competitive and see some competitive NCAA women's gymnastics, the final few meets of the season. It's kind of a shame that even during like the day, like they don't have them. They don't use like ESPN2. I know ESPN2 is being used for second round for women. On Thursday for the high school basketball championships. For the men, for the women, for the 6 teams, and then 8 teams for the boys. 6 for the women, which is girls. 8 for the men, which is the boys. So, and then they're having 2 on ESPNU, and then with the Prime Video having NBA rights, they also wanted G League either G League rights thrown in, or they paid a little extra for G League rights. And Samsung TV Plus has G League rights. This app, there's either, so they're paying for them. The Fast, on that Fast app. So they want them, right? So then ESPN used to have exclusive rights. So even so, they could have someone like ESPNU or ESPN News. They could. I don't know why they don't even have someone ESPNU, ESPN News, when their other sports, like if they have college baseball on, or college softball on, or NBA, NHL on ESPN. or ESPN2 has high school basketball, or the or ESPN or G League and ESPNU or whatever. Sports like that. I don't know why. You couldn't do it otherwise. Even this is like filler programming. I don't know. But it is what it is. I mean, kind of a shame, but I'm pretty. But I know pretty soon it probably will be like that. If it probably will be eventually like that. To where it goes to ESPNU. Where ESPN News is even like filler. I hope so. But I think what overshadows it though is like college basketball on ESPN networks in like ESPN, ESPN2, and they don't want to do that. But I don't know. I don't see why you couldn't though. Even news like do that as even filler coverage. Their stuff is on, but you could show like an early afternoon. Could show a couple weeks on ESPNU. They got 2 Eastern and 4 Eastern. You could. You could. And say you could have definitely shown both of them on ESPN and you could have easily shown both of them on ESPNU, and then moved the fencing coverage. You could have definitely moved the fencing coverage back. But then again, I guess the G League coverage you didn't know, so. But even so, you could have done one meet on ESPN. For sure the 3 Eastern, and then do the 5 Eastern on ESPN News even. For the fencing, like the re-air show. So I don't know. Even the meet on ESPN News. So, or if so I don't know. It is what it is, but at least on ESPN Plus, I can't complain about that. Streaming does a lot better than with streaming, because at least I can see the stuff before it might be on like ESPN3. which is still streaming, or it never be on streaming. It might just be on I don't know why, because I'm saying they have more regular season meets than they have the postseason meets. That's what I'm kind of saying. Like, why don't they just have, if they're gonna, have the postseason on there? I don't know. It is what it is, though. But